Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar organized by IPI on how can your business embrace the future of work digitally. My name is Lynn and it is my pleasure to be a host for this webinar. Some housekeeping instructions before we start. As all attendees will be muted throughout the session, if you have any questions for the speakers during the webinar, please make use of the Q&A tab to submit your questions and indicate the name of the speaker that you're directing your question to. Please note that this webinar will be recorded. A link of the video recording will be shared with all registered participants after the webinar over email. A copy of the slides presented by our speakers can be downloaded upon completion of a feedback survey form, which we will share with all towards the end of the webinar. To begin, I'd like to give a quick introduction of IPI. A subsidiary of Enterprise Singapore, IPI works with Singapore-based enterprises in the scouting of technologies, as well as facilitates innovation partnerships to catalyze the development of new and innovative products and services to be introduced to the market. In supporting Singapore enterprises to accelerate their product innovation and growth, we've also recently introduced the Innovation Advisors Program, or IAP in short. The program supports Singapore SMEs and venture-backed startups in their innovation journey through bespoke advisory by innovation advisors who are industry veterans that are bilingual in both business and technology. Where applicable, the customized advisory provided by our innovation advisors can help you develop a differentiated value proposition to enter new markets, target new revenue sources, and grow your business. Let us know in the feedback survey if you'd be keen to learn more about the program. In today's webinar, we are pleased to invite some of our innovation advisors in the digital space to share on the industry experiences and best practices. Our moderator for the webinar is Mr. Benny Goh, himself an innovation advisor with vast regional experience in industrial and IoT, with a focus on innovation and strategy. In the past 15 years, he's held many leadership positions with MNCs. He was the Asia President for Tyco International, a company in the security and fire solutions business. He was also the CEO for China Yuchai International, a New York Stock Exchange listed company. He's now the founder and managing director of his own consulting firm, Parami Solutions. I'll next like to hand over the time to Benny to commence the panel session. Benny, please.
Thank you, Lynn. A very warm welcome to our distinguished panelists, as well as to our participants attending this webinar today. It's very timely that IPI has organized this webinar on how can your business embrace the future of work digitally, given our situation today. Let's first introduce our two panelists. Mr. Chia Wee Boon. Currently an advisor with Singtel, Wee Boon brings his operational experience, technology knowledge, and capability to advance the implementation of Singtel's enterprise business for its associate company, AIS Thailand. He was also the CEO at NCS, and prior to that, Wee Boon spent 26 years at HP, where he held senior business, sales and marketing, and operations executive positions in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific. He also sits on the boards of Hope Technic, NAFA, the Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts, and SIM, where he chairs the Audit and Risk Committee. The other panelist is Mr. Derek Tan. Derek is an entrepreneurial and innovative technologist with more than 20 years of executive level experience as a business and technology leader. He is currently the regional leader for IDEMIA Asia Pacific and oversees the systems development and integration teams providing solutioning services and consultancy across Asia. Before joining IDEMIA, Derek was SenseTime's Executive Director for Engineering and Professional Services across APAC. He was responsible for advancing SenseTime's AI solutions across key verticals, ranging from smart city to smart retail and building development. Derek has also held senior leadership positions in multinationals such as Johnson Controls, Tyco, and ADT. In today's seminar, we will first dedicate the first 30 minutes to give our panel speakers a chance to share their perspectives and experience in a digital journey. after which we will then take questions from the audience. However, please do so, send in your questions anytime during the session, and your questions can only be seen by the support team and myself, and we will try to collate them and answer as many as possible. Apologies in advance if we cannot answer every question due to time constraints, but we will be sure to answer your questions after the webinar via email. Now, as recent as February 2020 this year, FinTech News reported that Singapore has been ranked first in the world for digital readiness. This was before the full impact of the pandemic, before we had to go into the circuit breaker mode. How true is it that our companies are ready for the digital future? The future of work has been on everybody's mind. Much debate has taken place on how our workplace, workforce, and work itself should transform to stay relevant even before the pandemic. COVID-19 has accelerated this need to change. I share here a slide from INSEAD Business School, which shows the speed and level of digitization across industries. You will see that unless you're already in ICT or media or finance, most industries are clustered around the lower part of the curve. The extent and pace of digitization for many companies has room for improvement. However, in the post-COVID new normal, is this acceptable? How do we therefore embrace the future of work in the digital realm? What must we do? So let's hear from our first panelist, Wee-Boon. Wee-Boon, please.
Thank you, Benny. Good afternoon to all of you. What I want to do is cover certain aspects of the business which will allow you to get on the bandwagon along the digital journey. We are on the throes of a very exciting period in the history of computing. But first, let me share with you the global trends that I extracted from PwC report recently. The moves and advances in technological developments has been unprecedented. I've been in the IT business for the last 40 years. Never has there been so many technologies introduced at the same time, all purposeful to effect life-changing outcomes. Technologies like AI, IoT, mobility, video analytics, 5G, all these are unprecedented in the history of technology, perhaps in the last 20 years or so. And next, leading at the same time, populations across the world, especially in the developed countries, are not replacing themselves fast enough. And what this really means is that there are lesser employees or workers coming on board, lesser young coming into the workforce, and the old are getting older. And the implications are, one, the need for increased productivity. And unless you've got more workers, there is no way you can maintain the same level of productivity. Obviously, the other solution is to use technology. The other one is the impact to healthcare. As more and more people are getting older, the burden on the healthcare system is going to be heavier. The third point I want to make is about urbanization. For since time immemorial, people have been moving from rural into urban areas, into urban cities and so on. And more so in the last 20 to 30 years. You look at Lagos in Nigeria, you look at Mexico City and various cities in Asia Pacific. You see transmigration happening, and the burden on transport, on education, on the healthcare system, on public safety is forcing local governments to relook at how to govern major cities with technologies. I won't cover the last 2 points on global economic power and resources. So let me move on to the next slide. At the microscopic level, enterprises now have to deal with these mega trends that we talked about in the previous slide. And all this is reduced down into the impact on workforce, on work, and on workplace. The workforce, like I said earlier on, has got now new social demographics with the young coming on stream that are a lot more digitally savvy. There's a lot more, they are typically digital natives as compared to the more elderly that need to adapt themselves to new technologies and so on. And going forward, the nature of work, not only will processes change, but now we're going to have robots as our colleagues. And last but not least, for as long as there is an access point, for as long as there's electronic access into a cloud or into a computer system, there's potential to work and play anywhere, anytime. So going on to the next slide, I want to make a comment here about digital and non-digital, online versus offline. But for as long as there's online and digital technologies, digital will always prevail over brick and mortar. So on the left-hand side, you see various technologies, and this is by no means exhaustive. And you mash this up together and effect a business process or change the business model that fundamentally becomes a digitally transformed business to create a desired business outcome. The business outcome could be operational efficiency measured in terms of costs, increased revenues, and in the process, increased margins and customer engagement. You could have other desired outcomes as well. It could be the level of innovation. You could have increased employee engagement. All these could be effected by digital technologies. I want to make this point make one point before I move on to the next slide. And that is the success of a digital journey. The success of digitalization project is fundamentally dependent on the alignment between business and IT and the available talents to execute it. And if you've got this combination right, the transformation will be successful. But I want to add that technology is not for the sake of technology. So this slide gives you some examples of the use cases that can be deployed. Facial recognition in workplace. In my previous company, I could walk from my car park into my office, in my office space, without having to use access card. Everything will be digitalized, is digitalized, and with my facial recognition, my face recognized on the system. And you go forward, you could change the customers, you could deploy digital technologies to change and redesign the customer service. You could deploy robotics or robotic process automation. This is software to change and fundamentally reduce the dependence on people for mundane kind of routine work. And the last comment I want to make is a very important one. Increasingly, in my engagement with many of my clients, they've been coming back to me and talk about the future is about competing data. So with the availability of data, therefore, makes a difference to the survival of the company. Going to the next slide, during the pandemic, crowds and shoppers were all withdrawn and confined to their homes. So this is an example in Tekka market. The shopkeepers, the merchants, they were all encouraged to go online, and obviously they managed to reach out to their old customers and able to, in some cases, see a rise of 50% in their turnover. It could be vegetables, it could be any form of retail. goldsmiths, and so on. In the case of China Heritage Center, they have got they sold tourism products. They even have e-tours. The use of chatbots has been in place in DBS and IRAS for a number of years now. In the case of DBS DigiBot, you could block the use of credit card, you could replace a card, you could check the credit transactions, you could make transfers across accounts very easily with the DBS online platform, but in the background, the work is actually done by a robot. In the case of Singtel, you could renew your contract using a chat, using a WhatsApp, and then in the background, that too has got a robot doing the real work. For those of you who interact a lot with IRAS, IRAS has got a chatbot called Ask Jamie, and this facilitates questions and answers for questions pertaining to GST, property tax, and income tax. So moving on to the next slide. Instead of going through line by line across various agencies, I want to maybe share with you a personal experience of what I did in my previous company. All CEOs will face pressure on financials, either top line or costs or bottom line. In my case, because of business expansion, we see more and more requests coming in from our operations for more and more people. So in one case, in the finance department, in 1 year, this is about almost 3 years ago, I said, you know, the increased number of people is unsustainable. So the only way we'll give you back in terms of what you need is no headcount increase, but we'll put in all the money into technologies. So that's the start of RPA, the financial analysts who do reconciliation of numbers, of various ledgers, and so on. And they started off with 4 bots, 4 projects, and the coding is done by the financial analysts. Each one of them goes to a class, and they get to learn how to code. And after the coding, they can effectively get a robot to do their work. From 4, we increased to 120 across the board. Across the board in the finance department. So that not only saved money, but it also curtailed the increase in headcounts. So similarly, I'm sure in OCBC, in UOB, you got chatbots, you got RPA, all doing a lot of the mundane work that human beings used to do, but probably not as challenging. Going on to the next slide, I just want to make a comment that we are at the stage where probably privileged to have technologies, we're inundated with technologies. Technologies, frankly, looking for problems to solve and for problems to apply to. So going forward, in order to get onto the journey, it's best if you've got something that's structured. Starting with digital planning, starting with a clear idea of the vision, a clear idea of what digital transformation could do for the company, and then put in some effort into designing and documenting the blueprint. And one area which I want to emphasize a lot is digital transformation fundamentally changes the company's way of doing work. It fundamentally changes the way customers are engaged. So change management is not something that's trivial and something which should be paid attention to. And the other area is in talent. There's just not enough digital talents in the market, enough to go around to every single company for us all enterprises, big and small. So once you've got the concept, once you've got a design, once you've got the blueprint, get on to identify a couple of projects, test it, run through it, test drive the ideas, and determine whether this is the objectives that you set out were right, that the UI, the user interface is correct for our customers. And if it's all good, you can then move on into enablement. Enablement effectively focuses on structure, on the infrastructure, on getting the foundation correct before you go to stage 4, which is scaling across the whole organization. And so last but not least, let me move on to the next slide. And that is the critical success factors, which I think will be successful which will be relevant for digital transformation. One is top-down commitment. Leadership must be clear in their mission, in their vision and strategies to determine what digital transformation can do for them. There must be proper funding and resourcing. There should be no such thing as you are doing this part of a digital POC as a part-time work. That's your part-time job. Your full-time job is something else. That's the fastest way to demotivate employees getting onto the journey. And obviously, you need to give them enough training funds in order to be enabled, in order for the capabilities to be built. And by capabilities, I mean new skills, including agile, including understanding and restructuring of business processes. The business processes are best changed by people who actually operationalize it. And next one is empowering employees, getting them to understand the big picture before you let them loose on the how-tos, upgrading tools and beyond whatever they have at present. And last but not least, communications at all levels, inside and outside the company. Make digital transformation, make digitalization a grassroots movement. And whenever there's success, celebrate success. So with this, I want to pass this over to Derek to expound on the details of the digital journey. Derek, please.
Thank you. So basically, the benefit of digitalization, I believe everyone is well aware that it comes with a lot of benefits in terms of operational stuff, retain and attract new customers, cost saving, and so on and so forth. The benefit is wide and rich, but nonetheless, in terms of digitization in APAC, not many companies is still embarking on it. There are many roadblocks to this, and I will touch base on that in that context. Roadblocks for digitization are high, basically in terms of investment. Many a time, many SME has approached me, and even a big corporation, in terms of how is digitization involve huge amount of investment. But my reply to them, first and foremost, is that, do you have a digital strategy, and what does it tell you? Did you go and look into your whole ecosystem, what your competitors is doing? Is it something of a necessity, or is it something that you have to embark on it for survival in that context? So with this in place, you will find that digitization will be something that you need to embark on, whether you like it or not, because your businesses, your competitors, your customers is looking into that. For example, during the COVID period, we have seen many retail stores, farm and shop, big corporation and things like that, is going to what I call online and offline type of strategy. You have e-commerce site, you have posting their goods on the e-commerce platform, and then delivering that. So this is what customers is looking at from a delivery perspective. So ask yourself, does the investment really needed? And how do you do it? Most of the time, I notice that most SME or even large corporations are in their comfort zone. I'm going after day in, day out, the numbers, the revenues, the growth and things like that. But what is the future that you're looking at? You are making all your KPI, your revenue skills KPI at first year, second year, and third year. But what is the long-term plan? In terms of digitization, definitely it will disrupt you. And we have seen many cases about disruption in our day-to-day life. Urgency is something of question. In normal times, experimentation of digitization is a risky event. You don't want to do something that affect your whole ecosystem, affect your revenue. But with this year, COVID, it has changed the status quo and also at the same time the acceptance of your employee, your customers, or even your business partner to go digital. This became necessary. This is the expectation. So this year is a unique whereby digital, what I call digital on steroid. When we are looking at the beginning of the year where we're working from home, many companies is struggling to see how to bring their employee back to the workforce through Zoom, to whatever means, is part of digitization, and we are forcing the digital space to be on steroid. Next. As what Wibun has mentioned, the framework of digital transportation journey, I will touch base in terms of more in-depth in digital maturity review, what is the journey that we want to look at, and also at the same time, an analysis of the value change that you are, how you want to value it. Okay? And then at the same time, I will look into how you want to go into the proof of concept, how you want to implement this digital. Next. As Bibu mentioned just now, leadership play a very important role in setting the vision, intent, and direction of the digitization. Apart from that, the clear leadership from every leader in the company, two main areas, inward assessment and outward assessment, is critically important. Assessing your company technology intelligence, TQ, or nowadays it called digital intelligence, DQ, where I break up into three main categories. The readiness of your people, the knowledge. Is your executive, the people running your companies, are they adequately trained, or are they familiar with digitization? Executives who are not knowledgeable in digital era will most probably fall prey into the myth of investing cool technology, AI, RPR, and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, they are still clueless. How can this technology generate values in them? It's not the fault of the technology, it's how you use the technology to optimize the values that this technology can bring to your businesses, benefit to your customers, your business partner, and so on and so forth. This is what knowledge of the readiness is about. Company readiness in terms of what currently you are in the digital aspects, whether you are digitizing, digital or digital transformation. And lastly, inward assessment is your people, the readiness. Is it a fear syndrome, whereby they are resilient to going digital because this might impact my jobs, my careers in the company? But by enabling them to be part of this journey, to be part of this plan, is their involvement. They know how the operation run, they know how the business run. They are the one to adopt digital if they are the champion in your company. Alignment of your organization structure, talent development, funding, and even day-to-day KPIs, year-to-year KPIs, with the digital strategy that you have chosen is the key. As I always say, KPI drive the behavior of the companies, and if you align your KPI with the digital strategy that you have chosen, it would be a success. Outward is in terms of your customer readiness, your ecosystem readiness, and also at the same time barriers to entry. Are we looking at technology company coming into your market, coming into your space and disrupt your businesses? Are you at the place where digital, like leveraging of digital, give you a leverage to fight for growth and even to extent of maintaining your survivability? Next. In terms of digital journey and blueprint, few questions you have to ask. What is our digital objective? What we want to do? Okay, where will the digital opportunity and threat likely to occur in your businesses, in your ecosystem? Where should we implement digital? It could be as simple as functional, IT system, finance, HR, to increase the productivity. It could be also a more far-reaching aspects of transformation to your core businesses. Transforming your core businesses, digitizing your business partner, digitalizing in terms of the your engagement with your partners and customers. What does it mean? When? When is a good time to implement? Ask yourself this question. Are we in the danger of a digital tsunami? When the digitization will occur and how quickly and the scale of the impact will be? Next question is how? What is our best response to embrace this? Two aspects: adopting a design thinking, a systematic change in terms of how you look into the whole problem, systematic responding, and intuition to address complex problems. Technology, what type of technology can you leverage? Most of the time, I see many companies embarking on digital journey, looking into functional aspects, improving the productivity of finance, HR, and so on and so forth. But reinventing the wheel of your core business, a bold strategy, but incrementally strategy is required. Next. In terms of ecosystem, traditionally, everyone is very familiar from raw material all the way to end consumer. You are looking at logistic company, retail, storefront, and so on and so forth. In the last 10 years, this has been disrupted with e-commerce, with phone and mobile phone and things like that. Many a times, I find that mobile phone is a disruptor. It is a small little gadget that disrupts laptops. It disrupts the whole mom and pop shop concept with e-commerce platform and so on and so forth. With the success of Amazon, Lazada, and things like that, middlemen, intermediaries, like retail storefront, in a way become non-existent. O2 and 2, O2O, online and offline, become an in for end consumer. Likewise, in the past, when we travel, I still remember when in my youngest days, we have to go to a travel agent, book a ticket, book a hotel. But in the last 10 years or so, we as end consumer go to booking.com, book air flight directly from, for example, the airline SIA, book directly from the hotels, plan our own itinerary. Again, this is an example of a value chain has been disrupted. Things you have to see in terms of, if you're looking at the bold change that you're looking at, what are the disruptions? Relooking into the whole ecosystem or reinvent the value chain, producer, supplier, disruptor, and consumer. And what is your relationship with them? If there is any changes, what is the impact to your business? This is what a think tank, a situational what-if scenario workshop organized by you to have a 365 degrees assessment into the whole value chain. If someone come to attack from digital aspects, what are the areas you need to know, and you need to react if this happens. Next. In terms of digital implementation, how to do it? I will call it as reiterative minimum viable initiative. Test and learn. You implement an initiative for a couple of months, get the data, look into it, any changes, what works, what doesn't work, revise, revamp, and launch it again. Experiment to your forte, testing and learning, from small scale to large scale. Technology, if you are looking at reaching mass market, cloud is something that you're looking at. If you're looking at predictive large amount of data, biometrics, for example, artificial intelligence, chatbots. Most of the time, large company or even SME tend to forget its data. As you store the data in your system, you have to ensure the data is safe from hackers. Cybersecurity aspects, data protection is important, equally need. Scalability of the system is required. When there's more load, how is your infrastructure, your IT infrastructure is able to scale. Review your data, internal data that you have, outside data also. Now, today we are living in a world of data to compete. Next slide. These are some of the recommended technology for industry, and I will share with you in terms of education. Education, like most industry, are not spared from digitization. And you have seen the mode of study has changed from face-to-face classroom-based to be online. There are many companies, or even our Singapore schools is adopting this year, online courses, online teaching. Digital textbook has been around, online quizzes, e-notes has been around in university, polytechnics, blended learning aspects. Learning allows students to learn at their own pace. To spice things up, AI, chatbots, for example, would be useful for students when studying even at night. Have some burning question. The professor, the teacher is sleeping, they ask chatbots. The wealth of information can be retrieved from it to teach the student. Internet of Things is another aspect that could be useful in terms of educational perspective. With creating a sensoric fabric in the school campus, everything is controlled to the extent of the safety of the students studying at night, turning on the lecture hall when the lecturer come in or the student come in, save electricity. Gamification is something new, learning through it, building fun in learning. Widely used now, I will see a very big impact will be AR and VR based learning, bringing the real life into the desktop. As of now, there are many schools providing this AR VR based training and education, from medical, equipment repair, allowing students to see objects in the 3D dimension, just like the real thing. This helps in terms of their learning exposure. Next. Don't do it alone. There are help, IPI is one of them, that we provide services to you in terms of formulating your digitization plan, a hand to help you on your journey of how you want to digitize in terms of management of your program, your processes, what type of technology to use to help, to spice up, to collaborate, to bring the value added differentiation to your businesses. Team buildings, and also advisory to your leadership in terms of the transformation that you need it to be done. With this, Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wibun and Derek. Very useful information on how we can speed up the digital journey. We are now open to the audience and have the panelists address your questions. We've got several questions already over here. Can I just remind the attendees, should we want to ask any more questions, please do so on your own, not on the anonymous attendee mode, so that should we have not enough time to answer your questions, we can respond to your question via email. Okay, let me just start with the first question. With facial recognition, how do you protect your facial biometric from being stolen or being leaked? Derek?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been doing biometrics for many years. So many people still feel in terms of biometrics, the usage of biometrics and your so-called digital DNA being hacked, in misuse and things like that. A couple of things that we can protect your identity or your DNA is, first and foremost, biometric system only store the templates, the minutiae of your biometrics. It shouldn't store your raw image. So the minutiae basically are digital, 1001. So when it's leaked, and most of the time, sadly, unfortunately, most of the biometrics are proprietary. They only can be useful for a particular biometric engine you are using. So this drive into the proprietariness of the technology for that particular supplier or technology you use. Second, just like I mentioned, the security. How do you protect, like any other data, from hacking? Few aspects: data at rest encryption, data in motion encryption, who can access your system, physical and logical. So with these two in place is that, and ensure that your data are kept, not just biometric data, any other data that is personal to your customers must be protected. And lastly, the template itself are in a proprietary format. So this hopefully can answer the question that was asked.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Next question. AI and RPA helps to perform repetitive and time-consuming business processes. Management will expect reduction in workforce cost and transit the skills to the specialists in RPA. How do we mitigate attrition of current workforce? Wibun will answer.
Okay, thank you, Benny. First, let me correct a misconception. AI and RPA potentially could help to decrease costs, but they are not the only. That's not the only business objective. If you've got voluminous, literally millions and millions and millions of records, and there is no way humanly possible, unless you're given years to go through them, unless you've got AI that can do a lot of the sweeping of data, the analysis, very at super speed. So it's not just a cost control issue, but also speed and also accuracy from AI and from RPA. So that's what I'm correct. Indeed, one of the objectives could be to reduce workforce costs. So therein lies the trick. If I were the CEO looking at the deployment of AI and RPA, I will not, and if it impacts our people, it is the responsibility of a business leader to make sure that he also finds solutions to increase the business revenues so that it can expand, so that jobs could be created as the older jobs that's being replaced by RPA or AI is created as well. So that's something which every responsible CEO must think of. Meanwhile, the workforce must continue to look at new skills, to look at reskilling, to look at taking away some of the routine, low value added jobs away, and that can be replaced, and then they themselves moving on to new things. The example that I gave, my financial analysts were called financial analysts, but I'll tell you honestly, they were doing a lot of the mundane data collection work. And after they introduced RPA, they really became what they were employed for, and that is to become financial analysts. They make use of analytics tools to now analyze the business as opposed to crunching numbers. So to mitigate attrition, I will give you a few suggestions. One is skills, making sure that the people are reskilled, introducing new skills, consider redeployment of resources, and last but not least, the responsibility of a CEO to expand revenues instead of talking about cutting costs only.
Okay, Wei-Wen, thank you. There's one question. It says, one of the industries with the lowest adoption of ICT is the building/RE developer industry. So what are some of the urgent, promising digitization trends in that space? Derek, would you answer that?
Yeah, sure. Most happy to do so. So in built environment, I presume your construction building RE developer is the built environment. Yes, built environment is something that has not been fully digitized, but I see a lot of traction in the last few years, more from a disruptor aspects, collecting huge numbers, creating a sensoric fabric. These are new opportunity or disruptive opportunity that I see. Many customers I've seen a lot, like many big local and also MNC is looking at building a sensoric fabrics in the buildings. They are looking at how to make these two things, automated buildings and also energy saving buildings. With a sensoric information being collected, they created the digital twins of the buildings for more monitoring and aspects. So from a built environment, these are the area that I foresee of digitization coming from. Bringing the physical realms into the digital realms. And with the collection of data, I could automate a lot of processes. Energy saving is one benefits that I foresee. Switch on the light aircon when there's occupancy. Control the aircon when there's a large number of people. And also at the same time, from a security angles, you create movement. You can see who's going on in the building. So these are the area of digitization that I foresee gaining traction now, but in the next 5 years will be huge, more and more huge traction coming from that space.
Okay, and there's one more question here. It says, what are in demand the skills for the next 5 years? And it's also related to the earlier question that I have here, is that, how do we ensure that the right talent to embark on this journey? What is needed? Maybe we will answer that as well.
Okay, so let me answer the question in a slightly different way. If you want to bring in the right talents, there must be a proper strategy, and that's why if you remember just now when I presented the framework, talent plan is actually top of one of those things that you want to do. It should not be an afterthought. It should be one of those top things that that business leaders should think about. So once the overall hiring strategy, the overall talent strategy is in place, it should cover what are resources needed. That means the kind of skills needed. Number two, take care of the current employees. Who are the current employees who want to shift and get themselves redeployed, reskilled to do new jobs? So maybe they could become from project managers to business process engineers, people who reconstruct and re-strategize, re-engineer business processes. That's one of those skills that's going forward in demand. And number two, the sources of where the talents are going to come from is going to be critical. It is not just recruitment, it is the network, it's actually the ability to have one magnet. You bring in one person who can bring in 8 person. And from 8 person, hopefully you can then multiply. So the kind of skills at that point, when you move into a digital organization, would include, you hear terms like agile, scrum masters, sprints, and so on. Also, those are new skills that's needed. There are new processes, and those are now increasingly more and more coming up from the university, and not just the university. Sorry, it's the Institute of Higher Learning, polytechnics, polytechnics and universities. Okay. So the next question is about what kind of skills are in demand. I would submit that there are a few of them which I find increasingly more and more useful, and especially in the digitalization world. One is enterprise architects. You get an enterprise architect to architect the whole architecture or the whole blueprint of a company, including infrastructure, data, matching businesses and IT. Wow, I'll tell you this is a highly valuable job. Process designers, increasingly the trick is to bring complex technology become less complex by aggregating technologies, by bringing in, by putting software to improve the user interface and so on. And last but not least, if you want to compete based on data, you need data analysts, and that would be really in high demand.
I think we have just enough time for one last question. I'm sorry. Let me just go through this one because it's quite relevant, because it says, we have discussed a lot about digital transformation and eventually running a digital business. This seminar is entitled, How Can Your Business Embrace the Future of Work Digitally? Can you share more about managing employees and how to structure a business digitally where we can be productive anywhere, especially in a current work from home situation? Who would like to give a shot? Maybe Derek or Vibun? Either of you.
You just let me exhaust the question first.
Okay, so basically it's asking, given our work from home situation, right, and then with this whole digital or the work of the future capability, how can we make our companies manage employees and structure the business more productively, right, when we're all working from home?
Maybe Benny, just let me start first.
Okay, Derek, please go ahead.
I mean, this is in relation to just now we do mention about having enterprise architect and things like that. So I have a different back for different and to answer the question that you just asked. How can a business embrace the future of work digitally? First and foremost, I think is your current staff. Look into the process of your businesses, which your current staff have. No doubt they are not digitally trained. They knows the businesses very well, the ecosystem, the things, what works and what doesn't work. They are the best champion to see how best to digitize. Or I call the dreamer. They help to improve your processes. What area can be disrupted? With this identification, then you bring the professional, the software architect, the data analyst, and so on and so forth, to help you to build the necessary technology for it. So first and foremost is your own people, but you have to equip them to make them more digitally savvy. Okay. In terms of your, I mean, now people is working from home and things like that. We have to set up the necessary IT infrastructure in terms of, like, for example, what we're doing now, Zoom, telecommunication. You have to have the necessary repository for documentation. If you are in the manufacturing aspects, can you generate PO, invoices, electronic, digital signage, digital signature? is something for approval. Last time your admin clerk or someone send you the paper to be signed. Now you look into digital signage perspective. Most bosses will say, how do I measure the productivity of my staff? So again, trust level. How do you could have what I call the so-called daily stand-up, 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes with your staff together to have connection with your staff to ensure what they are doing and so on and so forth. This is the period whereby digitization, especially work from home, the trust level has to be there. For example, for me, I run projects that during the early part of the year, I because of COVID, I cannot stay out from the home. Use Zoom with communication, manage to deliver a project on time. So trust is something important, and then encompass with the infrastructure.
Weibun, you got any other comments on how to make sure that it can be digital while you're working from home and be productive?
No, I take it. Thanks, Benny. I take it that that every single employee who's working from home must be given the tools, empowered with the tools to do their job. So if they don't have a laptop, they should be given a laptop. If they don't have the Wi-Fi, then they should be the company should help them subscribe and so on and so forth. But I want to. It's a new situation that every manager is managing. But I want to maybe go back to a basic axiom, and that is in management, you measure outcomes, not activities. Activities is like, you know, you check what are you doing, how much time do you spend, what do you do from 9 a.m. to 12, and then you went for 1 hour lunch and so on and so forth, and what time do you knock off? The outcomes are a lot more important. If the outcomes are measurable and they are there, then surely it must be very productive. Or if you think that the employees are producing too little, then stretch them or lower them if you think, lower the volume of work if they're overwhelmed. But the new way of managing employees, I feel, should be centered around outcomes. But having said that, after all, we are working in a social ecosystem. So it's important that that leaders, once in a while, bring them together virtually right now because of restrictions, and have them socialize over the online. So that's something which that employers must do. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Weibun. I think as a consultant, one of the key points also is this, right? While we are doing all this digitally, we got to also make sure that we are able to inculcate the culture of our company. Right? I mean, especially not empathize with those new recruits who join the company and they're all working from home digitally. They're trying to be productive, but we're not able to share the kind of networking, understanding our boss, understanding our colleagues. And it's very important as leaders to be able to facilitate a forum. Maybe have a Zoom meeting, but really to talk about the working capability rather than outcome and just the work itself. I think those soft aspects of it is also quite important. It's now coming to 5 o'clock. I think we will answer the other questions that we have over here on the chat by email. Although they do not have the names, I think what we'll do is probably answer it as a block for everyone who can see the questions as well. Now, maybe just to one quick 2-minute thing. What is the one takeaway, right, from each of you panelists? Weibun.
For me, digital transformation requires complete alignment between business and IT. And for it to be successful, that must happen, plus the talents needed to make digitalization a reality.
Okay, and Derek, what's your one takeaway?
Digital is here to stay, and question is, we have to embrace it. And the ways of how to embrace this digitization will be key.
Thank you. And for me, I surely learned a lot. I know that this whole journey is actually not an easy one. It comes from at the top. You must have a clear strategy. You must invest in the right tools. And of course, the people, the talent is actually very critical. With that, I think we come to the end of the seminar. So speaking on behalf of the participants, this has been a very engaging one. So I know it's very hard to do an applause online, but we'll have to do it very gently. And let me hand it back to Lian.
Thank you, Benny. I'd like to say a big thank you to our innovation advisors, Benny, Wibun, and Derek, for the very insightful panel and Q&A session. For participants whose questions have not been answered over the Q&A, if you had submitted them anonymously, you may like to get in touch with us and we can follow up with you subsequently. And to all our attendees, thanks for your participation. And I'd like to next invite you to fill up a post-webinar survey through the link displayed in the chat box to give your feedback. You can also download a copy of the speaker slides upon completion of the survey. And if you'd like a free consultation with IPI to discuss about your innovation needs or to find out more about the Innovation Advisors Program, please also indicate your interest in the form. And thanks for joining us and look forward to having you again in our future webinars. Bye for now.